This is Marcy. She's grumpy. She's going to help me do this Blender tutorial today. It's going to be about sculpting. I'm not. Huh? Do you want to help me? Ugh. She can be our mascot. I'm just going to sit her down over here. We're going to have a play around with some Blender sculpting today, and it can be difficult to get your head around, and some of the tools may not work how you kind of want them to do in your head, but it's a matter of experimenting and playing around with it. I'm no expert. There's plenty of experts on YouTube or wherever if you want to lean towards them later on, but I'm going to show you some basic stuff. So I've just opened up Blender, and if we go to sculpting, it'll start us out with a fairly subdivided ball here with lots and lots of vertices. So if I go to wireframe mode, you'll see that I have 25,000 nearly vertices in here. The more vertices, the more detail, the harder it is for your computer to run. There's a couple of options up here. Oh no, sorry, we want this. If we drop the viewport shading options down here, we can change our matte cap, which is the color of the ball that we're sculpting. Most sculptors like to leave it as like a red, like a clay, or a different sort of clay color this is, just so they can see easily the details. So something like this may not show up the details as much, but yeah, you can choose whatever you want there, I guess. I'm just going to stick with this one. The first thing I want to do is make sure my Dyne Topo, which means dynamic topology, is on, and that basically alters the mesh for us. It automatically regenerates the mesh every time we do a sculpt. So if I turn that on by clicking here, and I usually like to have this, and it depends how big my model is, but for this size, probably 6 for pixel size. And the first thing I like to do, and the first thing you should always do with sculpting, is get a general shape of what you kind of want to do. So you work on the general shape and then you work on the finer details. If you work on the finer details first and then try and shape everything, you'll lose those finer details. So the tool that you usually use for that is the grab tool, which is this one here on the side, a G for grab as well. And you'll see that I've got a small little brush here. It's the size of the yellow circle there. So I'm just going to Control Z that because I'm working on the bigger picture at the moment. I'm going to resize my brush. There's a couple of ways to do this, and I'll just turn on my screencast. Come on. There we go. Sometimes I've got to click that a few times. Anyway, whatever. Like that. So you can hit the brackets keys that are next to the letter P. So on the right of the letter P, there are some brackets keys, as you can see down here. Those keys, look for them. The one on the right makes my brush go bigger. The one on the left makes it go smaller. So they are keys as shortcuts to change your brush sizes. An alternative way to do that is to hit F, and you can slide up and down with your mouse and select. So I'm going to get a big brush here, and I'm going to try and pull a shape. Obviously you need to be able to rotate your camera and see where you're at all times. We've got a mirroring on here, so it's mirroring on the x-axis, so you might want to toggle that if you don't want it to mirror. It's probably pretty good to mirror for things to start with and then turn that off later when you're doing your detail. So I can pull this out with a big brush. Let's say if we wanted to get some sort of head shape. There we go, there's a head shape. I don't really know what I'm going to make at this stage, but let's just run with it. That'll do for my shape so far. Okay. Now, what do I want to work with next? All right, crease. I'm going to go, actually, no, I'm going to go with clay strips. Okay, so clay strips, basically what a clay strip does is it puts a line of clay on your character. So you can add mesh really easily. So that's kind of reminded me of Spider-Man a little bit. I could add this, if I hold shift, I can kind of smooth that out. That's kind of cool. If I wanted to add detail to that, I could grab my crease tool here. And there's a couple of things that you want to have a play around with up here. Here's your brush options. So with the crease, I like to put it up to 1.5, which is 1.5 times the strength. And the fall off, I like to change that to custom. I like to pull this down to that end of that first square, and then I delete this one here. So I click on it and hit that little X. And hopefully I'll just change my brush size. Okay, that's a bit too strong for me. So what I want to do is make my brush even smaller. Yeah, that's a bit better. A tip as well, so you can see I've sort of cut, I haven't really been able to crease where I wanted it to. You can toggle, I think it's called smooth stroke or something, Shift S, and then when I drag, you'll see that there's a little red line behind my cursor, and it just helps me do a really smooth cut in there. Can help, but you don't want it on all the time, that's for sure. So I'm just like going around those, let's call them eyes at the moment. The next thing would be, the next tool that's handy would be a pinch tool. Same thing, I like to have that on the strength of 1.5, and the fall off again, go to custom and drag that down about there. Delete that one. Oh, too strong. So if you find that your brush is too strong, it's a good idea to either zoom in. There we go. And that just cleans things up. This is actually called, with the settings that I've used, it's the super pinch method. And it just sort of cleans up your vertices a bit. So there we go. That's very rough. I've made a little alien head. So I don't know. I'm just going to have a bit of a play around with this now. I'm going to put it into... Is that all I wanted to tell you? Hang on. Oh, the flatten brush is pretty handy as well. Again, you want that on 1.5. And I'm pretty sure this one we want to turn the auto smooth up to 1. and they call this the polish technique in the Blender community. It'll come in handy a little bit more when we're doing finer details. I'm just going to have a play around with, and also you want to get this as well. There we go, that's given it more of a polish. You want to have a play around with I'm just going to have a play around with this. I'm going to speed it up for you guys and try and come up with something cool. Another thing that I forgot to sort of tell you guys is about the alt. So clay strips I've got here. I'm going to put a little hole. Oh no, sorry, not alt, control. Hold control and it'll do the reverse of whatever tool that you've got. I'm going to try and give this guy a crazy mouth. So clay strips normally would put mesh on and alt takes it away. Cool. Control. Okay, so cool. I've got a little face of a character here. I could work on it. I could give some sort of hair or something. I'm not even that's cool. That's good enough for me to learn the sculpting brush, have a play around, save it, and might use it one day, never know. If I wanted to go, like, let's say I wanted to start adding a body, instead of trying to pull it out from the bottom here, and this is where your mesh can get completely damaged, you can just add more. So just go to object mode, Shift A, add a whatever you need, create something. I'm just going to add a UV sphere just for the sake of this. Grab on the Z axis, bring it down, and you can either model it, oh, not the Z, Y. You can model it however you want, or then you could go into sculpt mode and start to sculpt this as well. Same deal. So you can see there that I've already made some little shoulders for my dude. You could use metaballs if you wanted to create some sort of body shape, but just don't try. My tip is don't try and pull your mesh out too crazy, all from the one shape. I'll have to hit Dine Topo and I don't know if I have to do all those settings again. Let's see if my brush settings changed. No, my brush settings are still the same. So just Dine Topo there is probably the only thing you really need to remember to activate once you're in a different shape. But yeah, so have a bit of a play around with that. I can't sculpt on here obviously because this isn't the object that I am working on. It's only the selected object, which was the new sphere that I made. Keep an eye on down here and try and keep your vertices down. You don't want Blender to crash. I don't know how the school computers go at this point. It's obviously better to have a nice CPU and graphics card, but yeah, see how you go. Alright, that's me done. Good luck, have fun.